Long ago, the land now called Karameikos was once the forest home of the Tralodar, favorite of the immortals. After a millennium of peace, however, a race of evil beastmen to the west were preparing to march in search of prisoners and more hospitable homelands. These beastmen had their own immortal sponsors, equal in might to the patrons of the Tralodar, so only a victory between man and beast would determine the fate of the two races. Nonetheless, hoping to tip the balance, the immortals descended and found three clever Tralodar youth, Halev, Petra, and Zerkev, to whom they passed secrets that could be used to defeat the beastmen, and tasked the three to spread their knowledge and prepare all Tralodar for the coming war. The war was brutal and devastating for both sides. After years of war, Halev, now king of the Tralodaran, confronted the king of the beastmen alone atop a hill. The Beast King was twice his size, with the head of a wolf and a hairy body that was foul. After a long and savage combat, bloody and wary, King Halev and the Beast King perished upon one another's weapons. Their armies looked upon one another, and the beastmen became fearful because their king had perished. The Tralodar resolutely raised their weapons and drove the beastmen from their lands. That night, during the ritual burning of Halev's body, the immortals visited Tralodar again. They came to collect their secrets and spirited Halev, Petra, and Zerkev away. Over the following 1,000 years, Tralodar's fortunes waxed and waned. During the darker periods, many evil forces settled in the land and were an anchor weight on the fragmented nation's ability to socially and economically recover from the war. That is, until a bit over a century ago. A city at the mouth of the Valaga River took on new importance as coastal trade routes shifted. There, Tralodarans began to trade fur for weapons, wine for equipment and knowledge, and procure wealth and influence they had not known for centuries. Most of the profits stayed on the coast and the lands immediately inland. Few merchants traveled into the wild interior. About this time, the nations of Darokin and Thyatis began to view Tralodar with increasing concern. The forest nation had never offered them any threat, so they had never erected any significant defenses against Tralodar. But then, Tralodar had never had the power to interfere with vital trade. What if its people should be united under a powerful leader? Worse, what if they were conquered by a foreign power? The Empire of Thyatis decided the matter by sending troops to Marinalev, the nominal Tralodaran capital, claiming it and laying claim to all of Tralodar. Thyatis took few real steps to secure Tralodar for itself. It installed a few garrisons of soldiers in vital coastal trade cities, and a tax collector took in revenues for all trade money which changed hands. The rest of Tralodar was more or less ignored by the imperial throne. Thousands of Thyacian settlers poured into the newly conquered land, receiving land grants from the government for extending the empire's influence over more rural areas away from coastal settlements. However, many of these settlers were ruthless men who stole land from the Tralodaran living upon it, and landless Thyacian lords brutally claimed sovereignty over villages as part of their birthright. For the better part of a century, the interior of Tralodar suffered under the conquest, while the coastal cities, growing rich on trade, prospered. That is how conditions remained until 30 years ago. At that time, Duke Stefan Karameikos III, a youthful nobleman of Thyatis, struck a deal with the emperor. Stefan, in essence, traded away his ancestral lands for Tralodar, and a guarantee of autonomy. The emperor recognized Stefan's claims to Tralodar, now renamed the Grand Duchy of Karameikos, and recalled all Thyacian officials. The duke set about establishing a common law, to which all citizens, commoner and noble, were subject. He also attempted to lure ambitious but decent nobles from Thyatis to tame the interior and enforce that law fairly. He began using tax revenue to build broad, good roads throughout the country, uniting far-flung villages with the coastal cities, and he protected those roads, driving back the goblins and orcs that were ready to prey on merchants and citizens. Today, Grand Duchy is still growing into a nation. Its two halves, Tralodaran and Thyacian, remain largely unmixed, but a peace between the two people has been mostly established. While large portions of the interior remain uncivilized and dangerous, most of the nations on the continent have representatives in Karameikos, a sign of the nation's growing international importance. But this is not to imply that Karameikos is without strife. and chief among the instigators of that strife is Ludwig von Hendricks, first cousin of the Duke. Baron von Hendricks grew up in the shadow of Stefan's success. He grew up twisted, resentful, and hateful, ever trying to embarrass or outshine the future Duke. Rumors circulate that Ludwig even once fed intelligence to Stefan's enemies during a military conflict in hopes that Stefan would be killed, and Ludwig would inherit his lands. When Stefan made the call for talented young Thracian nobles to join him, however, Ludwig pretended to be an upright, eager, and very lawful follower of the Duke, at least until he was awarded his baronial titles and the lands that go with it. With no call for hostility, the baronial capital, once called Halag, was invaded and brutally conquered by Ludwig. The dreary, unhappy farming and fishing community of about 10,000 has ever since been held in tight repression by the Baron's forces. The peoples, mostly Traladaran, are required each day to leave a family member as hostage with the guards. If they do not return by sunset, the hostage is killed and publicly hung as a warning to others. During the years since taking control, Ludwig has vigorously reshaped the Black Eagle barony into his own liking and plotted the downfall of Duke Stefan. With Thracian troops at the core of his guard, he has been supplementing his forces with orcs and bugbears. He knows that it is his divine right that he will someday sit on the throne now occupied by his hated cousin. Loln is situated precariously close to the Black Eagle barony. A town of just under 5,000 citizens, it is a ramshackle community of refugees who have fled the Black Eagle barony. It's trapped between the armies of the Black Eagle barony and the Duke's forces stationed at Ratleb Keep. The townmaster of this small struggling community is Mistress Sasia Vaduva. Mistress Sasia was born in Loln 28 years ago and has developed a hatred for the barony, hatred for its occasional raids into surrounding lands, including Loln, a hatred of seeing the infrequent bands of hollow-eyed escapees fleeing that territory. She has gradually been organizing the community into a permanent fortified settlement, and there is speculation that she is trying to acquire a noble title, a title that would provide much-needed imperial support. Over the years, she has persuaded the leaders of Loln to set up sentries in the forest who could warn of impending raids. She has fought the raiders when they came and inspired others to do the same. Eventually, when the last townmaster stepped down from his post, she took the position. She has the support and friendship of Presbyter Marin, who has reestablished the local church, and her two advisors, Leuven Ellehorn and Rorimac Oldbuck. While you are not officially employed by the town militia, most of your income is derived from fulfilling contracts on their behalf. And this is where you find yourself, in a provincial town in the backwoods of Karameikos, in a town surrounded by goblin tribes to the south, orcs to the northeast, and gnolls to the northwest, in a no-man's land between the Duke's forces at Ratleb and the forces of the Black Eagle barony.